Hi guys, I hope you're doing well this week. As you know, you have an assignment due this week, homework 4 I believe it is, posted on the blog, and you need to get into SPSS. So I'm going to offer you a few tips to try to get started with SPSS, a little bit of advice, and take about 5 minutes, 10 minutes to do this, and then leave it up to you. So first of all, as you can see here is the blog for class. Click on SPSS resources and you'll see lots of places you can go to get some help. There's some information here about where SPSS is available on campus. Here's a tip sheet that I wrote, a guide. There are videos on YouTube. There's help at the Social Science Research Lab. There's help online. So you're going to have to figure your way around this. I'm here to help as well, but do not come in to see me next Tuesday and say, I don't get it, I haven't tried. You have to try and you have to spend some time to get yourself through this assignment. So begin this now. Start working on this now. Alright, so what you need to do is go to the Blackboard and download the data file and the codebook, which I think most of you have already done for earlier assignments. I have downloaded a data file and a codebook for another data set, this one being, if you can see here on my screen, an NBC News survey done in 2009, and I have both the codebook and doc format and SPSS data in a format called SAV, which is .sav at the end of the file name. So if you double click on that while you are working on a computer that has SPSS, SPSS will indeed open right up and you can see that's what your data looks like. SPSS is a very popular program in academia but also in the corporate world, and because of that you are at an advantage if you can learn to do a couple basic things with SPSS so that you're familiar with the program. You can open it up and do a couple tasks which turn out to be about 90% of the tasks that we do when we use SPSS in the professional world. So learn how to do this. It's not hard. Learn how to do it and put it on your resume. When you open SPSS, it will open 2 and sometimes 3 windows, and you can see that down here at the bottom, right about here. If I do this, I think you can see that, what I'm circling there. So one of these is this window right here, and I'm clicking around in it, and this is the data window, and you can see here the data which we talked about in class Tuesday. Along the left-hand side are the cases, or each one stands for a respondent. Across the top, the columns are variables. If I hit Control End here and go down to the bottom, you can see way over on the left here I have 1008 rows. And that means that there is 1000 or are 1008 respondents in this data set. 1008 people took the survey. I'll go back up to the top here of the data. Another window that SPSS will open up is the output window, and here you can see it's largely blank because we haven't done anything yet. SPSS also has something called the syntax window. You go under File up here in the top left-hand corner and hit New, and then come on over here to syntax. You should be able to see that you can open up a syntax file. Using SPSS syntax, and here's what that window looks like, is something that you should do and should learn how to do, but we will leave it aside for right now. We'll get us through just frequencies and crosstabs at this point. So I'm going to take this window and I'll just close it for now. Alright, so take a look at your data right here, and then take a look at your codebook. And here is my codebook right here. So you can find this codebook on Blackboard. I ask you in the assignment to use the Kennedy assassination survey. I hope you find that interesting. If you really want to use another survey, I guess you could. That's not a problem. There are tremendous opportunities for using secondary data or data that's already been gathered all over now that's made public and is not used much. And if you could do this, if you could get into census data or other government data or Pew Research data and use it to benefit your company, you become a huge asset when you can do this. And it's not hard at all. So here's the codebook for the Roper survey. It has the basic information about the survey right up here at the top. I'm going to scroll down. You can always pause this if you want to take a look. And I'm going to come down right here. This is an abbreviated codebook. I'll make it a little bit bigger here. And you can see some of the questions that were asked, and I'm just going to use a few of these questions right at the top. So these are the survey questions that were done. So for example, question 1 here is, do you have a landline in addition to your cell phone, or is your cell phone the only telephone you have? Well, let me go to the data in SPSS right here. And the first command you want to learn is something called frequencies. So if you go to the Analyze drop-down menu, go to Descriptive Statistics right there, Frequencies, the one right up on top. Okay? So I'll click on frequencies, and I will find the first question, which is right there, Q1A. I can read it here. It says, do you have a landline? And I'll move it right over there to the variables column over on the right hand side. Now if you're looking at your frequencies box and you open it up, sometimes you'll just see a bunch of numbers. Well, you can do that too, just Q1A. See, there it is. But if you right click, you have some options here, and I'll display the variable labels. Okay. So this is the frequencies command. All you do then is hit OK, and up pops your data. This is called a frequency table, for example. Sometimes in some offices, instead of frequencies, they call it descriptives. If you've looked at the Pew Research Center data, they call it top-line data. It's all the same. So this is a problem we talked about earlier in class. Multiple terms for the same thing. Frequencies, descriptives, top-line data, it's all the same thing. It's basically running the numbers for your particular survey. All right, and what we're seeing here is a little table. I'm sorry if this is a little small. I was trying to make it larger earlier and didn't want to spend any more time working on it. I couldn't get it any bigger. So, and here the question is, do you have a landline in addition to your cell phone, or is your cell phone the only telephone that you have? And what I think they've done here is they have indicated that 104 people indicated that the cell phone is their only telephone, and that's the only thing that they coded for this question. Consequently, the numbers look a little bit unusual. Everyone else in the data is coding right here as missing. Let me run a different variable for you. We'll just pick the next one. There I go. Analyze descriptive statistics frequencies. You'll note that I can run the frequencies under any of these windows. And I'll just go to this question, Q2B, which is, would you please tell me whether you are Hispanic or Spanish? Actually, let's pick a different one. Here, I'll pick Q3A. I'm not even sure what it is. There I ran it, and there it is down at the bottom right here. This question is, do you think that things in the nation are generally headed in the right direction, or do you feel that? And to get the rest of the question, I need to look at the code book. I can do that pretty simply. I'll go to Q3A, right here in the code book. Right here is the question. Do you think that things in the nation are generally headed in the right direction, or do you feel that things are off on the wrong track? Okay, pretty typical question in surveys. Let me bounce back to my data and then my output. And you can see here what we're basically seeing are the responses to that question right here. So 337 people said the country is headed in the right direction. 550 people said we're off on the wrong track. 102 people gave some sort of mixed response. 19 people said they're not sure. And there at the bottom is my number. 1,008 people took the survey, which is what we should expect because we saw that in the data earlier. Plus we know that a lot of these surveys try to get a margin of error of about 3%, so they get about 1,000 people. We almost never report the actual numbers because they don't mean anything by themselves. If you say to me 337 people said we're headed in the right direction, 337 out of how many? Instead, we always report the percentage, which is in the second column right there. 33% of Americans said we're headed in the right direction. 54.6% say we're off on the wrong track. 10% gave a mixed response, etc. The next column is what they call valid percent. In that case, they take out missing values. And the next one is cumulative percent. They're just adding it up. There's nothing here you did not have in 8th grade math. It is just percents. And this is, again, 90% of what we report about and talk about when we report about survey data. In all those Pew reports that you looked at for class, that's all this is. It's just reporting on the basic responses to the question. So again, to run the frequencies, I go Analyze, Descriptive Statistics, frequencies, and while I'm here in the frequencies, what could I do? I could get, oops, sorry, it was on the other screen. I could get my mean and median if I wanted. I could get standard deviations. I don't really want any of that. How about charts? Let's get some charts. If I wanted, I could get some bar charts if I thought that might be helpful. Let's run the same question again with bar charts. Let's see if this works. Takes just a minute to come up. Here is the data again right here. Here's a bar chart of the answers if that's the thing that you like. Okay, so that is running frequencies. If you want to get good at running frequencies, play with the program, sit and run frequencies, and then stop and read the numbers to yourself so that they make sense. The second thing you need to be able to do for this assignment is to run a crosstab. Okay, I'm going to pick two variables that I'm going to run in crosstab. So let me go back to my frequencies. I'm going to turn off that chart right there. And the question I'm going to run is ethnicity. So we'll run that one. Not a very exciting question, but just ask people for their race. And then I'll ask about question 2C, which is, do you think things in the country are going well? So let's just take a look at the frequencies of those two questions. Here's the first one at the top. All in all, you think things in the nation are generally headed in the right direction. Here we go. We just saw these numbers. 33% yes, 55% no. And in here, the bottom chart is the racial breakdown of the demographics of the survey. Okay, 76.7% of the respondents were white, 11.5% of the respondents were black, 1.2% were Asian, etc. So the point of crosstabs is to compare two variables together. This too is something that we do a fair amount in survey research analysis. These two things are really the nuts and bolts of most of what we do. So crosstab simply looks at two variables. So instead of just saying to you what proportion of Americans think we're headed in the right direction, let's look at what proportion of whites, blacks, Asians, and other races think we're headed in the right direction. Let's compare or cross the two questions. Okay, it's done this way. You go again to descriptive statistics. Here's our frequencies, but instead let's come down here to crosstabs. Okay, you see that? I will click on crosstabs, and here it is. So I've already put question 2C, ethnicity, into the columns box. Put your independent variable into the columns box. Here ethnicity is clearly the independent variable. We think whites and blacks might feel differently on this question. We don't think that how you respond to the question is an independent variable affecting your ethnicity. That makes no sense. Ethnicity, gender are often our independent variables. Put that into the columns box. Click on cells right here. It says cells. Click on that. I think this makes things easier. And click on column percentages right there. That's the only thing you need to click. Click column percentages. Hit continue. I'll give you a chance to catch up. Now we put our dependent variable into the row, and if I was looking at this correctly, I was looking at Q3A into the row. There we go. Now I hit OK. Here's a big table of numbers. Again, I'm sorry for these. These are a little small. I hope you can read this okay. We read crosstabs down. We count them down. So you must make certain that the columns are adding up to 100%. Let's take a look at our first column. Right here it is the percentage of whites who responded to the dependent variable over here on the left, to that question. And I read this down. 28% of whites said we're headed in the right direction. 61% of whites say we're off on the wrong track. And if I add these up, 28 plus 61 is about 89%, plus 9% here is about 99%, plus 1%, it equals about 100% down at the bottom. You read these downward. Now, when students screw up in reading crosstabs, this is what they do wrong. And it's simply a question of logic and of reading percentages. Again, it's easy, but you have to think your way through it. And what I'll see on some assignments, people who have trouble with it, is they'll say something like 40% of Americans said this, 50% said this, and 40% said this. And I'll respond that they don't add up to 100%. If 80% of blacks think this, then clearly 20% must think that. It has to add up. So often there's just simply a logic problem there. So you have to stop and think. I also find that it tends to be a writing exercise. In other words, you have to write and explain things clearly. All right. So in this case, let me start again. I can look here and I see that 28% of whites think the country is headed in the right direction. And I see in the second column here, 65% right there of blacks think the country is headed in the right direction. 15.5% think the country is in the wrong direction. And 17% have some sort of mixed response. So right away, what I can say here, and what I can interpret this, is I can say this. Among the white respondents, 28% think the country is headed in the right direction. But among the black respondents, 65% think we're headed in the right direction. In other words, black Americans at the time of this survey were much more positive about the future of the country. White Americans were much more negative, or felt the country was headed on the wrong track. It's an interesting racial divide, speaks to the tenor of politics in 2009. So right away we have something interesting to say about a crosstab. That's what I mean by describing what you're seeing and doing so correctly. Pardon me. Again, to run a crosstab, last chance, I'll say this one more time. I go to descriptive statistics, frequencies, crosstabs. I will have looked at my codebook and picked out my variables. I'll find my independent variable in here somewhere. I will put that into the column. I'll find my dependent variable. I'll put that into the row. I find it easier if I click the column right there, hit continue, and hit OK. If you don't click columns, this percentage will not appear. So you can get out your calculator and figure it out yourself. It's easy to do, but let's let the computer do it for us. Okay, so start running some frequencies, start running some crosstabs. If you have questions, look on the blog. You can ask me questions. You can also get help at the Social Science Research Lab. You can get help with online YouTube videos. I encourage you to talk to and work with your colleagues on this, although each of you needs to do your individual work, but you certainly can help each other when you go to the lab. And I encourage you very strongly to start early. You need to do this on campus, using SPSS on campus, so please start early. If you go on to the SPSS information sheet at American University's website, you'll see that you can use SPSS at home using something called the virtual lab or something like that. I find this to be a little bit cumbersome and difficult to do. But I do know a couple of your colleagues have already done this successfully, so give it a try. If you're pretty good with your computer, you might not have any trouble getting it to work, and then you have the option of working at home on this assignment. Okay, I do hope that this was helpful in some small regard. Good luck and stay in touch.